Well, good morning. Welcome to Hobby News Daily, kicking off Hobby Palooza today. We have a full house. Glad to see everybody this morning. How's everybody doing?
Excellent.
Good.
Great. Let's just get started real quick with just a quick introduction. We can, like the Brady Bunch, we can go around. Adam, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. What's up, everybody? Adam from Heroes for Sale. You might have heard me on the podcast I do for Heroes for Sale or the Tuesday and Thursday podcast here for Hobby News Daily.
Rich?
My name's Rich Klein. I've been in the hobby longer than dirt, but not as long as some people. And I enjoy the casual pace of writing for Hobby News Daily of one article a month. That's the type of pace I can handle at this point in my life. And you've seen me on numerous or heard me on numerous web and podcasts. And I do want to give a shout out. I'm a semi-regular on Dr. Jim Beckett's podcast. And yesterday he would have been part of the Hobby Hotline crew that led off yesterday for Hobby Palooza. But there was a very nice memorial service for his dad, who was nearly 98 years old, at the same time that Hobby Hotline was on. And needless to say, he had more important things to do, and I had more important things to do. And listening to the stories about his father and his mother, I see where he came from. And it was quite a tribute to see and hear about what great traits he had picked up from his parents. So I want to give a shout out to that. That is not going to be the focus of my current article, which will post now that Adam's done Herculean work in fixing the Hobby News Daily website, and you can actually get to my page now. And this is going to be the article on the card that I say changed my life and got me into the career I always wanted to have. And it's a fun story. So I enjoyed writing that one.
All right, Samuel.
How you doing? Samuel Evans. I am the sports car collector on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. I am a educator by day and collector, avid collector, storyteller. And, I just like to tell my card story and participate and engage in the stories of others.
John Newman.
Well, thanks, Danny. Sports Card Nation, Hobby Quick Hits, Card Menches, Hobby Hotline, this organization. I might have forgot something. Happy to be here. I'm not in my normal studio setting. I'm on the road, but wanted to represent. You put together a great website. I've been in the hobby a long time, not as long as Rich, but I am catching up to him.
All right, Simon.
Hi, everybody. It's Simon, aka Simon466 Cards on YouTube and Instagram. I mostly talk about economics, data, and the business side of the hobby, which is what my background and day job are or were at some point in life.
Absolutely. And Courtney Reckless, how are you?
Good. How are you guys? So I've been collecting since I was a kid. Obviously, my husband and I, that was like something we bonded over when we were dating, and we started Reckless Cards. We have Hobby Night School. Jeremy does Too Thick with Manny, Manny being Manny, and I have Dangerous Games Pod, which is like a true crime sports card podcast. And then obviously I write for Hobby News Daily and Basketball Card Fanatic magazine. I just love the hobby. It's probably, when you have real life, I have 4 kids, we own a couple companies, and it is like an escape. It's fun. So that is what I truly enjoy about this space.
I think I love Courtney in the comments, so I don't know where that came from. And Tim says, I'm sure this will be said a lot, but I'm so glad Hobby Palooza is a thing. Yep, definitely Bench Clear Media. I want to give a shout out. That's where we are today. Mike Moynihan and everybody doing loads of work to get this going. But more importantly, the reason that we do this is to help raise money for Signatures for Soldiers, which is a fantastic charity helping veterans and they are the official charity of the National. People are not aware of that. So we are accepting and hoping that people will donate. At the bottom of the screen is the PayPal donation address. If you remember Juan Gonzalez, it's gonzalesnut@hotmail.com, and you can make a donation that way. On top of it, to help encourage people, I'll be giving away a 1961 Sandy Koufax in an SGC3. And that will, so if you make a donation on PayPal, just put it in the comments. We're going to work on the honor system here, guys. It's for signatures. And we'll pick a winner at the end of the show. Definitely want to make sure. I'm going to leave that address up for a minute. So, what is Hobby News Daily? Hobby News Daily is a website where we combine content creators like Simon and Adam and writers like Rich and Samuel and Courtney and John. And we put together just hobby information, what we enjoy, what we love, everything like you heard people say, from economics to Disney to vintage, all of the above. Just because everybody collects differently, everybody loves things differently, and we just want to make sure everybody's represented in what they collect. One of the things I'd like to do is to go around and have kind of you guys talk about a piece you've written or a piece you're going to write, just to give an example or talk about kind of, what you found when you wrote the piece. Anybody want to start on a piece that they want to talk about?
I'll start us off.
Okay. Thanks.
The very first piece that I wrote was about this term. When I came back to the hobby, in the middle of like a global pandemic, just sitting at home, and you can only do so much arts and craft with your children after a while. And I went inside my spare closet and I found this old binder of cards that I had when I was 19, and packs of cards that I bought at a flea market. And, from there, it jumped into like, wow, what does the hobby look like, feel like, and sound like today? Because the last time I collected, I was 13 years old, and that was like in the early to mid 90s. And I've been away for a long time, and just learning the landscape that at the time I felt like, wow, this is truly a business. And that's not who I am. And, all respect to anyone who do this for a living, more power to you. I applaud you. But for me, I just wanted to tell the story of the hobby through my collecting experience as a kid, and this notion of like the human capital, that cards is this conduit that brings us together. It invokes these personal and emotional connections and feelings, and they allow us to listen and engage with each other, regardless of what we look like, what background we come from. And it was this magical thing that I wanted to explore and share. And then also, after I went back to my own hobby school, learning this landscape and recognizing like, I think like this niche is missing, that we need to go back to why we collect. And like, yes, making, monetary gains is great, but not forgetting why we're all here. And it's because of this idea of community. It's this idea of connection, laughter, joy. When we get a big card, and even though you didn't get that card, you're just happy for that person who got that card. And to me, that's what human capital is. And just taking that deep dive into like the business definition of it, and using my educator background to develop a definition, that shapes what I see in the hobby and what the hobby could look like and feel like and sound like years to come. I'm just a firm believer in the human capital, and it was an exploratory moment for me to take that deep dive and think about all the experiences that I had, but more importantly, the experiences that I share with others and participated in their joy in terms of collecting. So it was a great piece, and I'm going to continue to tell stories like that through my experience, but also like, hold our community and the hobby accountable when things don't look right, feel right, or sound right, because that's the only way we can grow and get better. So I'm appreciative of this opportunity to, tell my story and expand on what I think human capital is as it relates to collecting cards.
You used the term. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I really liked that. That was well said.
Well,
Thank
Courtney, I was actually going to turn to you when I heard the term magical. It immediately reminded me of your piece. So will you kind of talk about, collecting non-sports and where you found a real passion?
So I've been a sports card collector since I was a kid. I still have the first Mike Singletary scorecard that I ripped out of a pack myself when I was 10. So I love sports cards. But in the years that we've been collecting, I have 4 kids, and so my son was really into Pokemon, and my daughter was really into swimming cards, which is still sports, obviously, but it's more along the line of Olympic swimmers collection. So that was like her getting into that was sort of my first like my first foray into not your like standard sports cards where we're looking for like out of the box cards. And then I also collected Garbage Pail Kids cards when I was a kid because who didn't? They were so gross. And my mom hated them and she would refuse to buy them for me, but I would get them anyways because I loved them. And then I have a 4-year-old and I have a 6-year-old, and they obviously love Disney movies and they love sports cards. My 4-year-old will run around and be like, reckless cards, reckless cards. She loves ripping Pokemon, but they didn't really know the Pokemon characters. They liked the way they looked. They were colorful. So when, we had bought like a large lot and they had like Minnie Mouse cards in them from like the 90s from Upper Deck that I had never seen. I didn't even know they had, Disney cards. And then the Caca-Wow cards came out, actually that's not even true. It was the Pixar cards that came out in October of 22. And I was at Burbank with my friend and she's like, look at these. So we ripped a bunch of them. And then I started to go in a deep dive on the Disney stuff because when I would rip the Disney cards, all of my kids were like, this is so cool. Monsters Inc., Moana, all the things that they loved. And they became super engaged in it. Now, I didn't expect the Caca-Wow cards to kind of blow up the way that they did because they were, they weren't being graded by PSA or Beckett and nobody really, cared about it. And then all of a sudden they blew up. And then all of these other brands came out. And because we had been posting about them and talking about them, people started asking me tons of questions. Like, what's the checklist? What's this? How many characters? What are the hits? And I'm like, I literally don't know the answers to any of these questions because I just ripped them for fun. But being the kind of person that I am, it became like, now I need to know everything about these cards. So then I learned everything about the Upper Deck cards. I learned everything about, what Mickey's real rookie card is and Walt Disney's rookie card and all these like, he had a tobacco card. That's crazy to me. So it became this huge deep dive. And now I feel like I still don't know everything because there's so much more to learn. And now Lorcana with their lawsuit and all of this, there's so much. So my first article I did was about all the current Disney sets that are like making their way onto the scene that have become really popular, what the checklists look like, what the hits are, if you should be worrying about them being massively overprinted because a lot of TCG cards are super overprinted. And so you're seeing these cards that you're told are super rare when in actuality they're not really that rare. They're not exclusive. You have to be careful with them. I buy them and rip them as someone. I collect them. I keep them. I have a wall full of Disney cards. I'm not even a Disney collector. This has just become a thing with the kids. And that's really a lot of what we do is for the kids. And there's not a lot of stuff that like as a family where you have people who are 4 years old to my 17-year-old daughter and then my Jeremy and I being like nearly 40 years old that we can all do together at the same level. Like all the kids can sit and rip packs together. All the kids can look at cards. They trade. It has been such a bonding experience for my family that when you guys asked me to write an article, that was the first one that I thought of because it was like, this is something that my entire family has enjoyed together. And it was great.
Well, I love that. Rich, you've been writing for many years for many publications.
I've been writing as long as John almost from when John Newman opened his first pack, which either tells me John Newman is really old or I'm really old.
Well,
I think we're both. I think we're both really old, Rich. Let's
Okay.
go down on the ship together. So you can be the captain. I'll be the skipper.
Okay, yeah, but we're not going to do anything in the submersive.
No.
Too
Rich,
soon.
one of the things I love about your articles is the vintage take, some of the historical stuff. Can you talk about kind of like why you've had success and why you enjoy writing those types of pieces?
Well, and I'll sort of go through what next month's article will be. Next month's article is going to be some reminiscences about the first national I went to 40 years ago. And there's some funny stories, like my friend decided to save like $10 on the flight. So we had 4 stops instead of a direct to Chicago. You're going from New York. You can take New York to Chicago. No, we stopped in 4 different, it was like a puddle jumper. We stopped in 4 different cities in Michigan. I can say I've been to Kalamazoo. And, it's like, next year, the next year was at the 20 minutes from my house. So I actually just drove each day. But it'll be stories like that. And it's fun stories because one thing I noticed when I was writing for Sports Collectors Daily is people really enjoy the reminiscent stories. They enjoy because they didn't live the hobby past. Samuel talking about how he found his cards in the closet during the pandemic, which is a fairly typical way for people who have come back in. The very nice young lady from Reckless Cards with her kids. It's a great story. She still has her Mike Singletary cards from when she was growing up, and she probably still will like looking at them and remember she gets transported back to being 10 years old before having to keep an eye on 4 kids. And we all enjoy these stories. We want to know the stories. And, when I do the podcast with Dr. Jim, we don't, he will talk about new topics with other people. With me, if we interview somebody, we're interviewing somebody that's more old school or on an old school topic. And we're discovering that there's a lot of people out there that really like the old school. They like the history. They like the reminiscence. And that's the key. And I've put a note into our group chat. I really want to hear I'm fascinated by true crimes podcasts. I fall asleep every night to Forensic Files on TV. You got to send me the link to.
Yeah, Courtney, definitely post that.
Crime. I got to start listening to that.
It's fun. We built a whole collection like around the stories. So it's not just, telling the story. It's we have the cards. We talk about the cards, the value, how crazy it is that somebody's card who committed a crime and wasn't like maybe even the best player on the team, how their cards are more expensive because of the macabre nature of them than people who were actual superstars on the team.
That sounds like a topic for a future show for somebody else.
It definitely sounds like a topic, and I definitely want you to send me the link.
I will, absolutely.
Thank you.
John Newman, I know that we might lose you, so I wanted to hear I know you write other places also, but why do you do it with all your other stuff?
I do it because, like Rich, right? I got all these things in my head from almost 40 years of being in the hobby. Some are more interesting than others, obviously. But, one thing I think following kind of the common theme that others spoke of, right, is community. And one of the pieces I wrote for Hobby News Dailies called The Power. And what it focused on was it's a great and strong hobby community, but sometimes we don't wield the power we have, right? If we don't like something going on, we have the power to send a message with what we buy or how we transact, right? So, we talked on Hobby Hotline yesterday about the Fanatics, stance with the LCSs. Like I always say, I love vintage, so everything that I like has really been produced. So if you don't like something going on, you can support your hobby any way you choose, right? You're the CEO of your own collecting and the way you hobby. And so we can speak with our actions. I don't think we do that enough sometimes. Somebody does something not above board, whether it be a breaker or someone else, and we can send a message by doing business with the people who have morals and ethics and etiquette and do it the right way. We can do business with them. And I think while the community's powerful, I don't think sometimes we know how much power we actually have. So that's where that piece came from. And just, a lot of my stuff comes from just experience. And, there are no experts in the hobby, just people who say they are. I think experience makes you a little more, experienced. No other way to put it. But I learn something every day. So I'm no expert. I think Rich would say he's no expert. He's still learning every day. And the minute I stop learning in the hobby, it's probably time to hang up the cards and exit stage left.
Well, I think that's a great transition, kind of into what Simon likes to talk about.
Real quick, Danny, because I got to run and free up some space. HobbyNewsDaily.com. I'm going to do a commercial here for you. I worked with Danny on it, but this is his baby, and he's passionate. And I try to find a hobby news source with this many talented people involved, not just what's on the screen, which is great in itself. And I'm sure Danny, before the hour is up, will also mention other people involved in the site. But it's a tour de force of hobby people, writers, content creators, just great people. And there's great news sites out there. I'm not besmirching anybody, but I don't think they have 16, 17 writers of this ilk. I mean, I write for Sports Collectors Digest. Like Rich said, he's wrote for Sports Collectors Daily. And so you got Horatio, who's not on the screen. He writes for Sports Collectors Daily. So, but you don't like 17. What are you up to? 16 or 17 people involved, and right now that no one has that number, and it's great people. And so there's my commercial for you before I get going.
Well, your check's in the mail. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping in. All right, Simon, before John made me blush, I was going to transition over to you and kind of talk about what you do, because you have a different angle as well. And part of the reason we love having all the different perspectives on the site.
Yeah. So I talk more, like I said, about the economics, the data side, the business side. I do it semi-selfishly because it used to be a core part of my job. I switched jobs. I don't talk about data anymore. And so I miss it. And so talking about cards is fun, talking about data is fun, and also making sure I still have that skill if and when I return to a job where I need to do this again. If I haven't done it for 5 years, I'm going to lose that muscle. So this is, it's kind of both for my personal happiness and satisfaction because I'm just talking about data, and also because I need to keep this muscle alive in case I need to go back to that industry in my job. So it's mostly selfish from my perspective. And if it just so happens that people learn some stuff in the process because I have a little bit of a different bent on it, then even better. So, if you go to my videos or go to my page and you learn something, like, great. I think I put some unique topics out there in terms of economics and data. So that's why I do what I do.
And you offer a money back guarantee if people don't enjoy themselves.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Money back guarantee. Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Adam, I saved you for last because you don't fit in. You're not just a writer. You're not just a content creator. You're part of the skeleton of Hobby News Daily, and you do yeoman's work on the website, and also every other day the Morning Minute podcast, which is out there. It's put out 5 days a week, and usually a special episode on Saturdays. And you co-host every other day, alternating with Mike Jokum. So talk about what your personal stuff is, but I think there's also a question that came up pre-show that you're going to have to address again.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, well, so TCU notably has had 2 redheaded quarterbacks, and I have to support any. There aren't many redheaded quarterbacks, so anytime there's a redheaded quarterback, I have to support them. So like when Andy Dalton was on TCU, that's kind of when I started following them, and then follow their baseball team's pretty good, and so I sort of follow them here and there. And obviously this year, this year was a great year to watch. This year was a great year to watch them. Unfortunately, not as much in the national championship game, but they did kind of upset Michigan in that game. So that was a ton of fun to watch that. And yeah, like I said, I have to, anytime there's a redheaded player or quarterback, I've got, gotta show my support there. So TCU, even though I'm from New England and a Boston fan, is one of the random teams that I follow. And I mean, it's actually kind of a perfect kind of encapsulation, honestly, like of what I like in the hobby. It's just like random things that I will just become a super fan of, like soccer cards. Back in probably 2019, they started following like Team USA. And now it's like every single game. Like last night they played, and then they played on Sunday, I think. And I was up all like the whole night watching that one. That started a little late. And actually, I didn't have Paramount Plus, so I had to watch it in Spanish. But that was okay. With soccer, you don't really have to. They don't need commentary necessarily. It's more just watching the game. But so my hobby story is essentially just like, I was in social media doing like content stuff back in 2017. I went to undergrad as a graphic designer. And then after that, I sort of was doing projects on my own, like just doing, I would look at like who was the top scorer in the NBA or who had the best day for football. And I would make like a graphic thing, like a graphic design poster sort of, and I would post on Instagram. And then unfortunately, one day my laptop broke and I still had the kind of creative itch to do stuff. And then I was also playing a lot of Madden Ultimate Team and MLB The Show, which if anybody in the audience is aware of those games, it's a lot of like, it's actually just card trading. Like there's cards in the game that you can buy and sell. And eventually I was on my computer and I was like, there's got to be a way to like do this in real life. Cause that was the thing I was most interested in. I wasn't really even interested in playing the game at all. Like I was interested in buying the cards and selling the cards, and getting coins basically, and like building teams and then selling the teams and all this type of stuff. So, that's when I got back into cards, and my original kind of content was a lot of like graphic design. So if you go to like Heroes for Sale on Instagram, you scroll back to like 2018 probably. It was a lot of like I was reviewing the design of cards, and then I kind of started learning about the market, and it sort of shifted. And then I think in the summer of 2019 is when I started like the Heroes for Sale podcast, and then going into 2020, I think I did a podcast every day except for 20 days in 2020, which pandemic probably helped a little bit of that. I had a little bit more time to do that type of stuff, and then then there's just been tons of different content. And then like you said, here Hobby News Daily podcast Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then Mike Jokum does Mondays and Fridays, and then sometimes Mondays and Wednesdays, and sometimes Fridays. And then basically a lot of like how the website looks. I designed a lot of the back end of the website and then the front end as well. So, that I've done that in the past with there was a music company that I worked for, and I was kind of like, can I design the website? And I did the same thing with Danny. Danny was like, go ahead. And then, luckily I think it turned out pretty well. And then from here, it's kind of just been like, here are the ideas, we'll jump on calls. We'll do, we want to move this stuff around. We want to put up the hobby Palooza schedule on the homepage. We want to get all the blogs and everything written are all like posted and all that kind of stuff. So, it's, that was one of the things. It was like this comment too. It was like, I would find the player and then I would find a random card from their career and review it basically from a graphic design perspective. Cause I still, like I said, had the creative itch. And then, a little bit later on, I did get a new laptop and I've been doing more design stuff, which has been really nice. Cause I've been designing since I was like a junior in high school. And that's kind of always been like a part of something that I really like doing. So, that's, I guess up until this point, there's probably tons of stuff that I'm missing here, but that's kind of my story and journey within sports cards, cause I think I love what everybody said. I think the one thing that's great about cards is that everybody kind of enjoys them. And but everybody can enjoy them a different way. So I think that's kind of the one thing that I really like about cards is that you can, you can talk to somebody and you can be having a conversation, but about two completely different things, but you're talking about cards. And I think that's one of the really cool things that kind of brings a lot of people together. That's why, the National, all these types of big card shows are all so popular, because, we also get to meet all of our friends that you make online. That was the big thing in 2021, I believe. Like, that was like, the National was so fun because it was just like I had been creating this brand, and then finally, the culmination is I get to meet all these people that I've been talking to on the internet for 2 years in person for the first time. That was really cool.
Well, you mentioned the National, and this is a good time to remind everybody that we are raising money for the official charity of the National, Signatures for Soldiers. So if you are so inclined to donate to a fantastic charity to help veterans in so many different ways, the PayPal address is on the screen right now as gonzalesnut@hotmail.com, as in Juan Gonzalez. And if you make a donation there and you want to put in the chat that you've made a donation, we will give away a 1961 Sandy Koufax. I'll be giving that away to somebody who wants to make a donation to Signatures for Soldiers. That's the whole reason we're here for Hobby Palooza, and it's an extremely worthy cause. So I just wanted to take a moment and recognize that again. And I'm going to scroll this on the bottom of the screen in case anybody missed it.
Real quick, hey Adam,
Yeah.
Beantown, that's my neck of the woods too. Spent 8 years of my life in the New England area. I played college basketball at Endicott.
Oh, wow, cool. Yeah. Grew up on Cape Cod, went to school in Boston. Recently moved to Georgia, actually, but I'm visiting the family, actually, so that's a little bit of a different setup now. But yeah, Boston, grew up here my whole life. Huge Boston fan.
And we let you be a part of Hobby News Daily despite that. One of the things I did want to do is just take a moment to recognize all the contributors to the site. We have John Newman, Chris Harris, Erica Massenberg, Victor Roman, Eric Norton, Brody TK, Kayla, as in Kayla Nordsworthy, Samuel Evans, Mike Summer, Rex at the Sports Card Shop, Horatio Ruiz, Drew Herndon, Mike Moynihan, Courtney from Reckless, Joe Chatz, Rich Klein, Heavy J, Jason. We have A&N Sports Cards and Mike Jokum. We also have media partners, and so just want to give a shout out because some of these people are a part of Hobby Palooza. Mike at Junk Wax Hero, John Newman, Sports Card Nation, Victor the Rookie Specialist, Dylan Double D Vintage, Jeremy Lee, Sports Card Live, and Simon, of course, Simon 446, as well as Jeff Baker and TTM Cast, and Adam's Hero for Sale. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all the writers and content creators. And good morning to you too, John. And so just thank for everybody who contributes. I wanted to move on and talk a little bit just about the hobby in general and why we collect the different things. And Courtney, I'd love your perspective just on kind of where the hobby is right now and moving forward towards the National, kind of what you're seeing and what you're expecting through the National, and where you think we are right now.
So I think the hobby, like almost everything, is pretty divided. You have half the people who are like, the hobby's the worst and everything's failing, and then that's not my experience. And I'm not like trying to be like, oh, hobby positivity. Legitimately, I go to shows every single weekend. I set up at a show yesterday and I couldn't keep cards in my cases. Like, they were, as fast as I was buying things from one person and putting them in my case, they were selling. So I think some of it is we're seeing we're still seeing a correction, and people who, are maybe new to the space feel that it's like everything's falling apart, when really, if you've been collecting for a long time, a lot of prices are still up, on most things. It's just, if you take out like the pandemic. So the people that I associate with, the people that are my friends in this space, we are all still like super happy to be here, where I don't feel that like crushing, like everything's falling apart feeling that you hear. And we're all very excited to get ready for the national. I'm like super excited to go. I can't wait to see, like Adam was saying, everybody that you meet online. You know, last year and the year before, it was crazy because we didn't really have like I wasn't on social media my whole time collecting. That was really a pandemic thing where like I'm stuck at home and we can't go to the card shop and we can't go to card shows. So we started posting pictures of our cards online. And that was sort of when I realized that people did that and we weren't weirdos for like being on Instagram showing pictures of our cards. And we built a whole group of friends that I would argue in the last 3 years have become as close to me as people I've known in real life for a long, long time as well. So getting to go to the national and like hang out with your friend, it feels like a family reunion.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of people, as we're gearing up for the national, you know, you're getting ready to sell your cards, the cards you want to bring, whatever's the most special thing to you, whatever you think you're going to be able to sell there. You know, everyone's fighting to get table space because that seems to be a huge issue. Like every day I see a post, does anyone have a case at the national? So I think with regards to that, I feel like the hobby's great, you know, because where I'm at and where the people, I'm not buying $1 million cards. I'm not buying $10,000 cards. I have like a couple big cards, but that space that we're playing in, everybody's still really happy to be here. I'm really excited to go to the national and to see everyone. And I do feel like the national, even more than a card show, it is where everybody finally gets together and spends that like, you know, week just being like, we're all such big nerds. Let's hang out and do nerd things together. So
Yeah, instead of the national, it's the nerdtional.
it is the nerdtional. We should rebrand it.
Courtney, did I hear you say that Burbank is your local card store?
No, I went to Burbank. I've tried this last year to hit as many of the big shows because we do a lot of local shows by us. I'm in Michigan. And Michigan is a really large collecting community. I don't think people realize like how intense Michigan collectors are. And you like hear people from Ohio and Indiana and Chicago kind of, if you set up a show in Ohio, Indiana, or, you know, Illinois, you're going to have like 50% Michigan people set up at that show with you because they will go. If you make a card show in the Midwest, Michigan will show up for it.
Well, you are aware that in the early and mid 1970s, probably the biggest card show in the country before the Willow Grove show became the East Coast show and the Mike Burkus started the National. You are aware that the Detroit Card Show in the early and mid 70s was the card show in the country.
So I wish that they would bring another huge show like that to Detroit or Michigan in some way, because I feel like it would be so well attended, and it is intense with the amount of card shops we have around us, and they're thriving. It's not like we have these card shops that are doing poorly. They're doing really well. So it's wonderful from a collection and a collector point of view to see that. And also just the excitement around like our local shows like Shipshewana, Lansing, these shows that go on, you know, the Johnny Ford show, there's waiting lists of vendors that are trying to get into these smaller, like arguably smaller shows that don't have all the media fanfare that you see, although Shipshewana is starting to grow with that. But, you know, Shipshewana is an 185 table venue that is completely sold out and has like a 40-person wait list. And when you see that kind of like excitement and everything going into the hobby space, it's hard to feel like it's bad. You know, I think that we have I hate to say, because I feel like there's space in the hobby for everyone, but if you're like a genuine collector, everything that's going on is just par for the course, right? Like markets go up and down, the cards, if you can get the cards you want at a better price, that seems like a win if you're collecting, you know?
Yep. Rich, you had mentioned the Detroit show, and Heavy J has a question. Rich, am I right that a 70s Detroit show featured a Wagner sold by telephone auction?
It's very possible. I'll ask. That's actually something to send to Dr. Jim. He may have been at that show where that happened, since he was teaching at Bowling Green, not that far from where the show was, and probably attended that show that happened at. It is certainly a possibility, because in those days, that is how cards were sold. You know, big cards like that were sold. They were auctioned, And, it's not like today's auctions on eBay. They were quiet, private auctions, so to speak. There was a publication called The Trader Speaks, and, but that had X circulation. And then, Sports Collectors Digest had Y circulation. But it wasn't anything like today where you can just type in the words eBay and get that, or you have these high-powered auction houses. There were no high-powered auction houses in 1976. There were individual collectors that were auctioning off duplicates. They'd go on business trips and that. And one thing about the Dallas Card Show that Courtney was mentioning, the waiting list. If I told you how many names were on Kyle and his team's waiting list, it would stun you. There was one show about a year ago. Kyle wanted he couldn't get the website to say sold out, so he put $9,999 for a table at the Dallas Card Show. He sold 2.
Oh.
And he refunded the money. He goes, no, that was just meant to say we're sold out. But that's how much some people wanted to set up at that show. They would have paid him $10,000 for a table. So yes, the National. They expanded by 200,000 square feet for this show. I don't even know if we're there 5 days whether we'll get to the whole show. For Samuel, for Simon, I don't know if you've ever been to a national, but I will tell you, I've been to mid-30s nationals, and I think it took me until like at national 32 or 33 not to be overwhelmed when I walked in the door.
My kid's first show was a national, and so their standard for like card shows is like blown out of the water. I'm like, they're not all like this, guys. So,
right. Adam, do you have a lot of shows up by you?
Well, I know that I think his name is Chris. I forget what his last name is, but they have a card store at like next to Gillette Stadium where the Patriots play called the Card Vault. And they started doing shows. They did one next to Fenway Park, and then they also did one next to the TD Garden. They've done a couple of those shows, and those. I mean, I went to I think two of them while I was still up here, and I mean those shows were phenomenal. I mean, they had they had special guests like Scott Zolak, who's like a radio announcer, was there. Taco Fall was there one time, so that was great seeing him in person. It was really funny. He was wearing like a full velour matching jumps. Literally, and his pants were taller than I am. He's just one of the tallest NBA players. And yeah, so those shows were really cool. I mean, I could travel probably out to New York for some of those shows, but I mean, the National is usually my big travel that I do most of the years. I mean, Chicago's my favorite venue. Those are the two that I've been. We're both in Chicago, and those were the first time I walked in. I remember getting looking around and getting goosebumps, being like, "Wow, I'm really here! This is crazy." And I mean, I'm hoping it's going to be similar this year too.
More shows,
right?
My answer is more shows to that question.
I want to talk about PCs a little bit, and I don't want anybody to share anything they're not comfortable sharing. Samuel, would I be putting you on the spot?
No, you're definitely not putting me on the spot. You know what? I think I'm not like the typical PC collector. I don't collect one player. I have a PC full of players from the era where I collected. If I had to choose between am I a PC collector or do I like to collect sets? I prefer collecting sets because of the journey that comes with set collecting. It gives you an opportunity to, go through some moments of hardship, some moments of joy and laughter, but more importantly, the connections and the people you get to meet during that journey. And when I was doing my 86 Flair set journey, it was one of those things where it was during the middle of the boom, and I was like, this is no way in the world I'm gonna be able to finish this set because the prices were just astronomical. But the day I got my 86 Jordan rookie, it changed my mindset, and I just operated from the space that there's no limits to this hobby. There's no barriers. So just always look at it like this. It's about the people, the time, and being in the right place. And, I was able to finish that set in like a year and a half. And because of the connections and the relationships that I made with a lot of people in the hobby, there were people who literally just like sent me cards and like, yeah, you're on this journey building this. And they would send me cards. And I was just like, man, this is awesome. So I would definitely say I'm not a PC collector. But I have like my Jordan PC, like Wilt Chamberlain, like all the different players that I loved and like growing up and heard stories about. But I prefer the journey of collecting sets. I'm thinking about what my next set is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be like the 79-80 Topps hockey set, or I'm looking at like something from the 90s that I enjoyed during my time. So it's fun, and just all the stories and the things that I've written about on my various hobby blogs, from collecting sets or subsets. It's been fun for me. So I think I am a set collector, and I don't like putting myself in a box, but I love the journey of collecting sets.
I think some people have definitely appreciate the set collecting, and that's one of the things I'm looking forward to at the National is going down my checklist to finish off as much as I can, or as much as I can afford.
And one thing I would like to add, like collecting sets, like I just think it's fascinating hearing everyone's perspective about like card shows and local hobby stores. Where I grew up in North Philly, like we didn't have local hobby stores, and I didn't know anything about like card shows. So like our ecosystem that we created in like my 5 to 10 block radius, and then when we got bused to Penn Treaty, this predominantly white middle school, and it grew even bigger. Like kids in Penn Treaty and even kids in my neighborhood, we weren't talking about, oh, we went to a card store over the weekend. It was just the joy of like going to Toys R Us and our parents being able to say you can get a pack, or going to a big box store and we were able, like a Kmart, able to get a pack. And then from there, this community of like being in the schoolyard, in the cafeteria, talking about these experiences of ripping packs. And I got the latest Michael Jordan, or I got this like rare insert. So like that was our journey, and that was our experience. And like now as a 39-year-old, almost 40, being able to experience local hobby stores, card shows, whether it be small or big. And the one thing that I found in the local hobby stores that I've gone to is just the amount of like knowledge and the wealth of knowledge, and some of the guys who've been in the hobby longer than I've been alive, and to see them still in this journey trying to fulfill sets that they started 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I've learned so much from these people, and they like accepted me into their community, and it's really given me a perspective about like, as I continue in my collecting journey and knowing that the hobby is a community, and thinking through the lens of like my journey as a kid and knowing what it is now, just making sure like all kids from any community have those opportunities, because there's so many kids who collect cards, but there's not enough experiences like nurturing their collecting experience beyond like buying a pack, or beyond like listening to their friends in their neighborhood. So just being able to like truly cultivate all those hobby ecosystems that are happening now, and providing access to kids where they can spend time at local hobby stores or be able to visit card shows. That's the lens that I'm operating from now, and it's all because of the experience that I've had now in my second hobby run. Visiting these stores and going to these card shows and just listening and laughing and connecting with people.
Well, I think you kind of summarized why I enjoy Hobby News Daily, and I think if you see the comments, a lot of people agree with you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We're on a hard 50 here. This went very quick. I would like, Rich, did you get your mentions in?
I got all my mentions. The only thing I wanted to add was my PC nowadays is hobby related cards. I was
Very
so excited the last Dallas card show. I went through one of my friend's dime boxes, bought the cards. Those cards are designed to make money, but there's a dealer in that room, and somehow 3 of his cards were in that box. And I bought the 3 cards. I had him sign the cards, and those cards are now part of my collection. It is the most eclectic collection anybody has, which is the hobby-related collection. I don't think anybody else does that.
And there we go on Hobby News Daily. Guys, thanks so much for joining. In a couple minutes, you can tune into Bench Clear Media's YouTube channel and find Pepino Man. And everybody else, enjoy your Hobby Palooza day. And please donate to Signature for Soldiers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.